see what you've got!
So here in episode 2, we actually put a couple embellishments at the very beginning. Since this is technically the first recap in the series, we wanted to do a little special extra embellishment on top of the recap theme. We used an early version of the recap theme used exclusively in episode 73.
On the last episode of Dragon Ball Z.
There's no cymbals added to it, and the drum beats are more prominent, so it feels like an early beta version of the recap theme, and so we wanted to use that for the early episodes. So as it opens, it usually normally sounds like this. But here we added a little extra space voices to it, just to give it a little extra something to make it a little more special for the series' first recap. So here's the low space voices. And here's the high space voices. All together. As the episode begins, we open with the theme Goku's Nightmare. But of course, I added in my usual snake charming sound effects. Both as he flies in and flies away. Near this part with Master Roshi and Bulma, we added a little extra Hanna-Barbera Warner Brothers sound effects before he gets whacked upside the head. Which, I like this note because it's essentially hitting the same key as this key in Earth music, but with an added extra little thump and liquid stack kicked onto it, more or less matching to scene and ending the track as it is. I appreciate this short little beach surfer guitar bit with Krillin that we added in. Basically, we just needed something to eat up time for approximately 5 seconds before we move into the next track for Bulma. Once again, another snake hiss I added in here. On top of here, things got a bit confusing and a bit clunky, but that's the way editing goes sometimes. We wanted to just add a little bit of extra space voices on top of Earth music here, because space voices has a tendency to have a nice creamy sound to it, which helps like glue in and transition into other tracks quite nicely. It's very subtle and you never hear it otherwise, really. Now this whole section was fun, where we added tiny little cutesy xylophone little bits for Gohan, trying to be cutesy and fun to match his movements to scene, just to add a little extra flair to it. All by itself, it sounds pretty bare, though. And initially we had a lot more written for it, but I'm very careful not to, what I like to call, overdress the scene, because I don't like to over-embellish everything where it's not necessary, or if it might possibly take away from the scene. But initially, Joe wrote a lot more of these little cutesy things for Gohan throughout the scene, but I made an editor's decision that I thought some of them were a little unnecessary, like right here at this little section right here on the wide shot of the gang. Initially he had a little more doot 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 as Gohan walked away on the turtle. But I decided to cut a number of them. I just didn't want to overdo it. I believe there were some written for Gohan yelling "scissors, scissors" as he plays rock paper scissors with the crab here, but I thought it was too much, and it was taking away from some of the dialogue that was going on between Goku and Krillin. I didn't want the music to be distracting, essentially. I like that one in particular. Cute. So here over top this section we use Call Out the Dragon as they talk about the Dragon Balls, but for the keen of ears, if you'll notice throughout Call Out the Dragon in the episode, you'll notice an extra layer of space voices laid over top of it. And we just did this to help embellish and make this little moment special, since essentially we cut it down quite a bit just to fit for timing, and we wanted it to pop out a little bit more, make this scene a little bit extra special as its debut moment. And at the same time, like I said, that creamy space voices helps make a smooth transition into other tracks. Because otherwise it doesn't sound quite as seamless. So after Raditz arrives, we use the Space Alien theme once again. But this part we embellished it a little bit for this section when Krillin decides to walk in and start waving his hand and tell him he's been dipping in the eggnog. I really like that. I think that's pretty funny. It's almost like some silly Cartoon Network sounds. The first part with the piano trill is actually recreated from an Android Saga track when the androids are getting arrested by the police. It's one silly filler episode that probably no one even remembers, but I like that bit, and I initially used it as a temp track and basically just had Joe recreate it so we can overlay it on top of the Alien Saiyan theme. And near the end here, we have a slightly slowed down, pitched lower version of the Alien Saiyan theme that closes off the scene. But to kind of set the stage for Raditz's theme to play, I added in one little Raditz guitar riff on top of the final key. Because essentially when we get back to commercial break, it starts to play Raditz's theme here. This whole scene with Raditz's initial debut scene was actually deceptively very heavily edited. The track was written for the final scene in episode 3, So I sort of had to repurpose it here a little bit, because just the way I sort of planned out how these themes would be used, I had to make it work for this scene a little bit. But the only real embellishment we added on top for this scene was Master Roshi's little IQ here. And that there is just a little bit of water phone on top of some high Henya, which are both Alesis sounds that are used a lot for specific cues. Typically when you add on an embellishment like this, if you want to mix it right and you don't want it to sound too busy, you may have to subtly lower the volume of the main track going on. Just so you'll never notice it otherwise in the final mix, but it's just a careful tightrope you gotta walk to make sure it doesn't get too loud at points. In order to shorten this track up a little bit, I had to sort of create my own ending here with this using a reverb effect and added cymbal. Pretty simple. And of course right here, pretty self-explanatory, we had to add in a little flashback harp. Just lay it over top of this serious flashback. Now this part I like. This is a very clever transition written by Joe, which essentially eases the Piccolo Returns theme, initially debuted on Namek, and turns it into this big choir piece entitled Goku is Falling, which is appropriate considering he falls off a cliff. So you could almost say it was named after this scene, but it just happened to work out. But he added a nice little extra transition, because otherwise it's essentially a bare crossfade if you listen to it without it. But what Joe did was he added over a little extra space voices in the right key, and then a couple little harps that really ease into it naturally. And the final product. Coming up here is a simple little section. I just wanted some eerie, shocking space voices to match the feeling of confusion and realization as Goku realizes he's from outer space. So we have some low space voices coming in after the flashback is over. But the best part about this is this added sound called Biosphere, which comes from the Roland JV1080, I believe, and it's essentially the most outer spacey space sound you could imagine. Lay it on top. Get it to naturally transition back into the alien theme. And the scene goes on. And here for this theme, you're essentially listening to the bare basic face-off theme with a little extra horror embellishment Joe wrote. All by itself, it just sounds like this. Right here, I repurposed a quick little water phone sound effect. Thought it fit for this quick zoom in for Goku. It's a good reaction shot. And essentially, the horror piece ends on its own, naturally leading up to the next track. Hopefully those of you for the keen of ears might recognize what this track is originally adapted from. Little flashback harp. Tried to time that with the background. Over here we have another little Raditz snake hiss. Now this part is subtle, and I thought was pretty brilliantly written, because essentially I needed Joe to connect two tracks that are nothing like each other. Really shoddy moment for me as an editor, but essentially I said, can you bridge these two tracks? And somehow he managed to make it work with what he wrote. So I'll play Goku's Nightmare trying to bridge into the little Spirit Bomb cue. And what he wrote here was a wonderful little wind orc low note that hits all the right keys and connects the two tracks pretty flawlessly. And as you hear it, it eases into the Spirit Bomb pretty nicely. But what you'll never hear otherwise is there's still an ongoing low wind orc note on top of the Spirit Bomb that you really wouldn't hear otherwise. There's no noticeable difference if you listen to it by itself. But it comes back into play afterwards, after the Spirit Bomb track ends, and he brings it back to match Raditz's little eye movements here. That in itself would transition fine, but, you know, Joe can be an overachiever sometimes, and I like what he did here. Over top here was relatively simple. What we did essentially was just add a liquid stack on top of the alien theme to match the graphics of the planet blowing up on screen. Here near the end of the episode, I added another little snake hiss to help disguise an edit that I made. Really, I had to make sure that the edit was pretty seamless and not distracting anyway. Now for our finale of the episode, we essentially added a little extra horror strings as the music builds, and we hit the closing theme. up here we have most of our embellishments. These three guys right here are actually a little Raditz echo I added in. I'll show that off in a sec. But essentially the embellishments thrown in here are just a little extra horror strings added on top. Combine that with the whole ensemble. Up here, if you listen to the actual episode audio, you'll hear Raditz actually have a little echo to his laugh. This is a nice little extra touch that I threw in because in the original dub mix back in the late 90s and early 2000s, they added a lot of really over-the-top echoes, which I thought added quite a bit of charm to the show. So I noticed they were gone after they were taken out for the remastered versions, and I don't know, it lost a lot of pizzazz for me personally, so I thought I'd bring it back for some little dramatic cues and evil laughs wherever necessary. And essentially, what you're hearing is just a couple echoes with some added delay effects that I threw in there.
The unthinkable has happened. Gohan has fallen.
Nothing much, just a little something to help the viewing experience. There's a few of these scattered throughout the show. If you're keen of ear, you'll notice some of them. And that would pretty much do it for episode 2. Thanks for watching.
See ya, loser!